What does this mean for the team? David Andrews out for the season.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to put together a list of players you couldn't lose, I would put David Andrews at number one. I'd argue your most important offensive player, certainly your most important offensive lineman. I mean, this year with Alex Van Pelt, they were having the center sort of do the checks that they used to have the quarterback do in the Patriots' old system, and like it can't be understated how important he is to that room, that group, the quarterback situation, and I'm more so talking about Drake Maye, when he would play later this season, it's a killer for him. It was also something in the summer. I think a lot of us said, like, hey, the Pats have bad depth at center. They lost their backup Jake Andrews to a season-ending lower body injury, and they moved up Nick Leverett, who was a guard, who's really never played center before. So now you have a third string center if he can play. That's the other thing about this is Nick Leverett after the game guys was limping around the locker room in San Francisco. And yesterday when I watched practice for like, whatever it is, 15 minutes we get, he wasn't doing anything. So they had practice squad center Brian Hudson snapping the ball. So like all of a sudden you lose one of your most important players. I would argue someone who you can't replace. You might not even have your third string center in Nick Leverett. It might be a practice squad guy. So this is just a disaster among several mini disasters in the Patriots right now.
Mark, could you just, off the top of your head, name another team in history, good, bad, average, where at any point during the season you could say that their most important offensive player was the center? I mean, that speaks volumes about this team right there.
Yeah, it does. It's a team that lacks elite talent, and they also lack depth, and that's a problem when you start to lose certain guys like Jawan Bentley. You watch them; they very clearly don't have a replacement for Jawan Bentley. Christian Barmore, there's clearly not another Christian Barmore. So even losing an above average player on either side of the ball, you're seeing all these, like, I don't know if you even want to call them cracks. They're just craters on this roster, and it's a reflection of how poorly the team was built, over the last, I'd say 3-4 years, but just, they're in the state of a rebuild and losing little starters here and there that you're right. You're gonna, like, David Andrews isn't a Pro Bowl player. Jawan Bentley isn't a Pro Bowl player, but you can't replace him because your roster's bad. I mean, they were barely holding things together anyways, to start the season in September. And now it's just really probably a new coach's worst nightmare.
Let's talk about Jerrod Mayo here. How close is he to kind of losing the locker room? I mean, it's been 30 years since the Patriots have looked this bad.
Yeah, it's funny. My colleague Karen Gregan was trying to ask some players about that yesterday, and I mean, as of right now, players are steadfast in their support for Jerrod Mayo, and I think part of that is the relationship a lot of them built with him, before they got to New England or before he became the head coach. He's well liked. He's still well liked. I mean, his thing as an assistant coach was getting to know people or players off the field, getting to know their families. And my understanding is that's continued. He takes a much different approach to Bill Belichick, and if anything, he's bought himself some leeway here because players like him. They want him to succeed. He does push him hard. He's not a pushover. So I don't see him, quote, like losing the locker room like right now. I think a lot of players are smart and they knew going into this season that this was a rebuild. So I'll be honest, I think just based off who he is as a person, it's bought himself some wiggle room with that stuff.
Is there freelancing on defense? We heard a clip from Greg Bedard on NBC Sports Boston. He looks at the tape and he says that Keon White isn't containing on the outside, even though he's been coached to do that. Do you see freelancing across the board by this team?
What was eye-opening to me in San Francisco was just, Josh Uche and Keon White, how often they lost their edge. And in the Patriots system, as like these defensive ends, edge rushers, you need to set the edge. That's been the same thing with Bill Belichick, right? Basically you got to set the edge and hold it. Don't let a wide gap open up between like the tackle and the guard. And if you can do that, try to, keep the quarterback in the pocket. And that wasn't happening. I mean, Josh Uche, was sort of blowing upfield, and as was Keon White. So when I heard Devon Godchow say that he thought defensive players were being selfish, or, I hear people talking about freelancing, I thought about the edge rushers and sort of the lack of contain. Now, Keon White he's green, even though he's a good player. He was a tight end, in college. He moved to defensive line, I want to say, for 3 years, and one of those years he was hurt. So he's relatively new to the position. And Josh Uche is more of a situational pass rusher on third down. So, like, for example, the Pats lost Anthony Jennings last week. Sort of another guy that they really couldn't replace because Anthony Jennings, although he's not a Pro Bowler, he sets the edge really well, and he's really good against the run, and I thought he was missed against the 49ers.
It's one of those things that you take for granted, guys like Rob Ninkovich, who would set the edge and not necessarily, show up on lots of highlight reels, but you go back and watch the play afterward and you realize why it doesn't develop is there's a guy doing that job. Now, when it comes to the Dolphins on Sunday, here's a team that's got plenty of issues of their own. What does it mean for the Patriots if they aren't able to beat this team in this situation on Sunday?
Yeah, if you can't beat this team, guys, I don't know what team you'll beat, right? I mean, you look at the schedule, it's like, all right, they catch a break with the Dolphins because Tua is not playing, so you should theoretically be able to beat Snoop Huntley at home. And there are other teams in the roster, the schedule that have been struggling as well, whether it be Tennessee, Jacksonville, Chicago's been up and down, the Rams have been up and down. I mean, there are winnable games on this schedule if you're not the worst team in the NFL, right? There are winnable teams if you have an above average defense and a below average offense. And we're going to see real quickly how much the Patriots can rebound, losing a guy like David Andrews and all these other injuries that are happening right now. I mean, honestly, because the offensive line, you might still have DeMontre Jacobs, you might have a practice squad center. Layden Robinson, when I watched practice yesterday, your right guard wasn't in there either. It was Michael Jordan and Sidney So. So the pass offensive line is going to look completely different. The defense needs to rebound because people are really on them. If you can't do it here, I don't know who you can do it against.
All right, can you take us through the Pop Douglas situation and what he did and how he's reacted since he did it?
Yeah, so there have been multiple moments this year where Pop Douglas has sort of thrown up his hands when, he's run a route and hasn't gotten a pass attempt. And he's clearly frustrated. I mean, we saw that after the game a couple weeks back when he had no targets, no catches. But against the 49ers, there was a moment or two he would run a good route, he would beat his cornerback, and the ball doesn't even come his way. Whether that's because Jacoby Brissett's not looking, on his side of the field, or because there's pressure or, what have it. So Karen Gregan went up to him yesterday to ask him about it, and he just, they all see the tape. He saw it, the quarterback saw it, the entire team saw it when they were reviewing, and he basically apologized. Mea culpa, that's not who I am, and that's not who I can be. But it's not a surprise at all to me that Pop Douglas, who is your most talented receiver, is frustrated because, these guys are, even though you're losing, these guys are still playing NFL football. They're getting paid, and they want to have good stats, right? It's about legacy. It's about earning money for your family. And when you're a part of a really bad offense that can't throw the ball and you're a receiver, I understand it.
Yeah, I get it too. I mean, you want to make money, and if you're not getting thrown the ball, that's more difficult. Best case scenario for Pop Douglas, because we tried this exercise on the air just because he's upset and Tyreek Hill is upset and Devontae Adams is upset. You think of those two guys and you go, those are elite receivers who are upset. Pop Douglas, best case scenario for him, if he's on a good team, what receiver is he? 1 through 5.
Yeah, if he's on a good team, it's either a 3 or a 2. Like, I think right now where he is, undersized slot receiver, untested, multiple concussions last year, you're probably a 3. I don't think it's crazy to think that he could be a 2 because he is talented, but I would definitely say a 3 with him. And I think the only guy that could be better than that in the Pats roster would be a healthy Kendrick Bourne, who I thought at times last year looked like a number 2. I think he was on pace for like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns or something like that. Like that's solid, but yeah, 2 or 3 maybe. But I think I'd put Bourne the only legitimate number 2 guy, but when healthy, and he's not currently healthy. So I frankly don't know, guys, if the Pats even have a number 2 receiver on the roster.
You got Higgins and Waddle are 2 receivers.
Yeah,
I don't know. Pop Douglas is not coming. You're much nicer than I am. But you're in the locker room. What can I tell you? I Pop Douglas, 3, 4. 2. Mike Williams. You got Waddle, Higgins.
Give him another year.
No, not if he's. I'm just talking about the carrying on. That I don't understand why you're carrying on when you're like Hollywood Brown carrying on.
Because he's getting open. He's not getting the ball.
I get
Mark
it,
just told us.
But and Mark knows. Mark has broken down the film. All right, Mark, congratulations on the David Andrews news, even though it means that the team's not going to be as good. And that affects Drake Maye, I would take it. Drake Maye playing, you agree? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. Jerrod Mayo says that isn't the case, but I don't think Drake Maye should play until you have semblance of an average offensive line, and right now they're not even below average. They're horrible. So until you get that aspect figured out, I don't think you can trot out your number 3 overall pick. Now, we asked that to Jerrod Mayo yesterday. He said they're not related. I will say this. Drake Mayo basically worked with Nick Leverett, though, in training camp. So if Nick Leverett is the starter, the offensive line can somehow settle down. Yeah, maybe they play Drake Maye since he has experience with him. But if it's me, guys, and this offensive line looks like this throughout the year, I save Drake Maye.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark Daniels. Read him in Mass Live on masslive.com. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate the time.
All right. Anytime, guys. Thank you.
All right. We appreciate it.
If you like that clip, and how could you not? Check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. Point slightly up and to the left. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. Point slightly down and to the left. And for the latest from the Sports Hub, download at 985thesportshub.com.